Hello, AAOA members. We are so excited to have you on our first webinar of the year, How to Increase Revenue in 2022. This is for rental property owners like you that are looking for new ways to grow your business. And we have Innago with us. We have Dave Spooner and Tanvir Sattar. We've had them with us before, and they're coming back to us with some updates and some new strategies that you can implement today in your rental business. And before we get started with that, I'm just going to say a couple things. We are going to have a Q&A session after the presentation. So it should be about an hour long. It might go over depending on how many questions you have. Please make sure to put your questions in the question box because it makes it easier for us to track. And that way we can, see who's answered what questions. And then also we'll be giving you the full recording tomorrow in an email, as well as all of the PowerPoint slides. So if you miss anything, don't worry about it too much. Howdy to you, Alex, in the chat. You feel free to chime in the chat if you want to say hi. And then I'm going to go over to the next slide so I can tell you guys a little bit more about Tanvir and Dave if you haven't heard from them on the last couple webinars. So Tanvir has been a real estate investor for 7+ years, and he joined Innago 4 years ago. He works now on business development, marketing, and strategic partnerships at Innago. And outside of Innago, he loves kicking the soccer ball around. He'll have a lot to tell you about his real estate experience. Dave has been working in real estate technology since 2013, and he recently became an investor. He's joined in the club just about 3 years ago. While he may not be good at either, he admits he loves pickup basketball and playing a round of golf. So I'm so happy to have both of you with us today. I'm excited to hear what strategies you have to share with our members. I'll pass it along to you, Dave, to get started.
Cool. Thanks so much, as always, for a great intro, Alexandra. So as Alexandra said, we are property management software, and our mission is to really help small to mid-sized, typically landlords, make renting simpler, more accessible, and more affordable, regardless of their size, regardless of the types of tenants that they rent to. And everything we do, from the information that we put out into the world to the product that we're building ourselves. And sorry about that, I had an audio issue. So all the different ways that we interact with tenants and landlords, the product we're building, everything that we do at Inaugo is really to service that mission, to make things simpler and easier in the complex world of landlording. Today, we're going to cover how you can improve and increase the revenue on your properties. And really, it's not just about revenue. I mean, maybe a better name for this presentation would be increase the profit, because revenue is just one side of the coin. And we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about different revenue streams that you can add. Some are going to be very specific. Some are going to be more broad. I think all will be of interest to various landlords. Different fees that you can charge your tenants appropriately, how to go about that, how to evaluate that, when and how to increase your rental prices, how to evaluate the market against yourself. But also the flip side, we're going to talk about those expenses, how you can reduce general expenses, how you can save on utility costs and often forgotten financial charges that you're paying, like your taxes. There's a lot of different strategies you can take there. And finally, we'll also talk about tips to limit turnover and decrease vacancy rates, which are one of the big hidden costs when it comes to what you're doing and what you're paying out of pocket. So we'll cover all that, but Tanvir is going to start on the revenue side of things. He'll cover it for us, and I'm going to hand it off to him.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you guys for having us today as well. So first thing I'll talk about is increasing revenue. So my first slide, it'll be more practical items. We'll go to the next slide. Okay. So revenue streams to add. So as I said, the first couple items that I'm going to talk about today will be practical. The next might be some things that you haven't thought of before, but we're definitely seeing landlords in the US taking advantage of these things. So first thing is cleaning services, right? Cleaning services is something that a lot of landlords kind of look over and think, oh, it's just on my tenant to clean the property. But if you do network with a cleaning service, the nice thing is you'll have someone to call when the property does turn. And then you can also offer that to your tenants at any time. And the nice thing is, once you have a cleaning service set up, you can kind of manage that, right? You can say, hey, company XYZ, I want you guys to really focus on the baseboards and then also the coils in the fridge, right? Something that's going to save you time and money and make the property look better. So just something to think about with cleaning services, anywhere from 100 to 200 bucks per clean. And then you can charge maybe 10% to 20% on top of that to generate some more revenue. The second thing is going to be to consider would be storage spaces. So storage spaces are a great item to take advantage of, right? You have tenants who might have golf clubs, bikes, winter activity items or summer activity items, and they don't want to keep it in their rental unit. So offer them storage spaces. Do you have space in a vacant garage? Do you have space in your basement where maybe you can put some cages up and some locks and just rent out that space? We have a lot of landlords on Inaugo that have storage spaces that they use in the basement of their apartment buildings. So the first two, I mean, kind of a higher barrier to entry. The next thing is satellite TV. I know satellite TV, people are getting kind of away from just a general cable services, but truth is some tenants are lazy. Sometimes they want things done for you. So if you have over 5 units, a lot of the major players in the cable industry, so Spectrum, DirecTV, things like that, will give you a discount. Yes, you have to tee up kind of the whole process of getting the cable people out there, but once it's set up, you can charge anywhere from $20 to $30 extra per unit for satellite TV. And then the last thing on just kind of our practical slide to consider would be corporate housing. So corporate housing, I think, first thing you want to do is check your market. See what properties are around and what businesses are available for corporate housing. See who's down the street, who else is doing it, what their cost is. The nice thing is, yes, you'd have to fully furnish your property, but when it is not rented out, you can then show this property. So it's going to be a better sales pitch. When someone comes in to look at a property for you, you're not going to just show them a vacant apartment. You're going to show them a fully furnished apartment, maybe some greenery in there and things like that. That way it'll really increase the chances of the sale. And so corporate housing, you can charge maybe $50 to $150 per night, really depends where you live. You can also do weekly rentals or monthly rentals as well. So that is just some of the revenue streams to consider. Next slide we're going to look at is going to be some non-practical items. So first thing is lease a billboard. So leasing a billboard, first thing you want to do is check with your local law on that. But if you are near a busy intersection or even somewhere near the highway, that's something to consider if you have some spare land available. The initial cost of a billboard obviously is going to be high, but you can lease that from anywhere to $1,000 to $4,000 per month. Piggybacking on the billboard, you can also lease out a cell phone tower. The whole US network is moving to 5G, and now 5G cell phone towers are needed. So with the cell phone tower, you need about 50 to 5,000 square feet. It really depends on the tower that you're going to get and the space you have. The upfront cost, it's a lot. It's anywhere from 150 to 175K, but you can charge $1,300 to $2,500, even $3,000 a month for rent on that. So these are just items to consider to add different revenue streams to your property that you own. And then last but not least, coin laundry and vending machines. So with coin laundry, you want to make sure that's at a common area. A lot of landlords are losing tenants if they do not have laundry in the unit or a common space where they can do laundry. Instead of like having the hookup in the room, you can consider in their property, you can have it in a common area, and then you can manage the operation of that. So you can get a washer and dryer set, or a washer or dryer set, from anywhere from $700 to $1,000 per unit. And then the average return, charging $1 to $2 per wash and dry, is going to be anywhere from $75 to $200 a month. So you're looking at a break-even point after 6 months to a year. And then after that, what you'll do is, that is just straight revenue for you, straight income. So take advantage of that. Okay, so that is a couple revenue streams. I'm going to check in with Alexandra for our first poll question.
All right, there's the first poll question on the screen. I hope this is the right one here, Tanvir. How many of you charge and collect late fees on tenants? And I'm very curious actually to see what this is going to come out to, because I actually had somebody ask me this just yesterday, and I told them in California, for example, you can charge a late fee, but it is a little difficult to enforce sometimes.
Mhm.
But some tenants, they will go ahead and pay it, but it is sort of like I'm seeing a split here, actually in the poll between everyone here. I'm going to just give you guys just a few more seconds to see how many of you have answered. It looks like most of you have answered. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and show the results. All right, so it looks like 57% do actually charge and successfully collect late fees. 25% don't charge them, and 18% do charge, but don't really collect successfully the late fees. Interesting.
Good. I mean, that's awesome to hear. That's better than, the market average that we usually see. So that is great to see by the AOA users. So for the ones that are not taking advantage of late fees, first thing of fee to add is late fees. Make sure you can enforce those. There's a lot of softwares out there that will actually, like Innago, that will add a late fee automatically based on the rental term. So if you're not using it, if you're not implementing a late fee, definitely take advantage of softwares that are out there. Next thing for fees to add would be a pet fee. So in the US in 2020, 67% of Americans owned a pet. So if you do not offer a place where pets can come in your property, you're losing almost over 1 out of 2 potential tenants. Yes, I mean, as a landlord myself, I'm wary of pets, but it's definitely, you usually get better tenants. They're more responsible. You can charge an upfront fee, anywhere from $100 to $200 for the initial pet deposit that you can probably keep. And then secondly, you can also charge a monthly fee for the pet fee as well. And we see that anywhere from $25 to $100. It really just depends on the pet size and also kind of the property where that's at. So pet fees are something to consider. Next thing would be application fees, right? So you want to check with your state law whether you can screen the tenants or not. But odds are, if someone's going to pay for an application, they're more likely to rent your property than someone who's just going to fill out an online application and then at no cost, right? You're going to get better prospective tenants. You can vet them out using criminal checks and credit checks. Again, check with state law on that, and also eviction checks. Make sure you set a good price on that. And then this is your opportunity to verify that everything the tenant says is actually true from a third party. All right, moving on the list, lease termination fees. So first thing you want to do is you want to check your lease and see if you have that. Check with your legal team. If you don't have one, you definitely want to add it. Barrier to entry, that totally free for you. We see anywhere from one month's rent being charged to 2 months, or even a larger fee on top of that. So you're looking at maybe $1,000 to $2,000 extra. The nice thing, it takes the headache off of the tenant of trying to find a subletter or trying to find another person to occupy the property. It's pretty cut and dry. They pay this fee and they can move out and move on. So definitely take advantage of lease termination fees. And then last one on the screen, extra occupant fee, right? A young lady's renting from you, and then her boyfriend moves into the property. Make sure it's documented in your lease first, but once it is, you can charge an extra fee. So whether it's $50, $100 per month for that extra adult to stay in the property, definitely take advantage and do that. And then also you can screen that person, right? Make them fill out the application because you want to verify who is living in your property. Okay. And I think we were going to go next to increasing rent prices, and it will also be our second poll question.
Okay. When is the last time you increased rent? 0 to 6 months, 7 to 12 months, over 12 months, sorry, I have a little typo in there, or never, if you've never increased rent, I would be surprised if that was the case. Here is the poll. You can go ahead and start answering. Yeah, and I think, you know, I know California better, but I believe in California, you can raise it more than once a year if you have a month-to-month lease. Otherwise, it's just the one time a year. But in other states, I believe you can do it much more frequently. Let me go ahead and wait a little longer. All right, let's check out the results.
Okay.
Very interesting. 36% of you 0 to 6 months ago. Over a year ago, 37%, never 10%.
Mhm. So yeah, it looks like it's pretty spread out. So some of you for our next slide will probably already have taken advantage of some of these options that are out there online. But you know, here are some things that you might not have considered. First and foremost is use your online resources, right? Check Zillow, check apartments.com, see how much rental amounts are in your area and then compare them to your property, right? Take advantage of the internet. There's stuff online that you can look through, sift through. Maybe you're charging more than your neighbors, maybe you're charging less, but if you're charging less, you definitely want to increase your prices. The second thing is hit the streets, right? Because for every landlord that's posting online, there's another landlord that's not posting online. Look at their for rent sign that's in their yard or on a billboard and just call them up. You know, you'd be surprised. These are your peers. They're happy to talk to you. Look, we have 240 of you guys on here today. They're happy to network. You know, maybe you guys can share some trade secrets, and then you can also talk about ways to improve the rents in your area. So talk to local landlords, talk to your realtors, things like that. And then last but not least here is create pricing tiers, right? Look at your properties, look at the amenities that you offer, whether it's on-street parking, off-street parking, you know, if it's new technology in the place, how many bedrooms, things like that, and then create pricing tiers. And then always at the end of each year of your business cycle, take another look and reevaluate these things. You shouldn't just look at this information one time when you're thinking about increasing rent. You should make this an annual process as a part of you owning real estate. All right. And next, we're going to talk about how and when to increase the rental price. So after we've evaluated the market, some quick things you can do is improve your existing property, right? It doesn't have to be much. You can add new light fixtures, right? You can update maybe a half bathroom in one of your properties. Just give them something that looks new, something that looks like it's from 2020, 2021, things like that. Maybe an open concept. You can take out a wall and now they have an open floor plan. That's what, you know, people want these days. And then also you can implement high-tech features. So what would a high-tech feature be? Like a smart thermostat, like an Nest, a smart fridge, keyless entry, and then even a video camera. Not only are these items going to make your property more sellable to people, to prospective tenants, it's also you're taking advantage of technology because it can lower some of your electricity costs, things like that. And then if there's ever a package stolen or something like that, you might be able to catch them on camera. And it gives your tenants that peace of mind that you care about them and that you're trying to always improve their living situation. Last thing on here is investing in green technology. So that's LED light bulbs, that's eco-friendly washer and dryers, things like that. That's going to lower your energy costs, which is great if you are taking on the energy bill yourself. But if you are charging your tenants, the nice thing is you can say, hey, your energy bill is going to be lower than everyone else on the street because I've implemented all green technology in this property. So these are just ways that we've kind of ran through today to increase rent prices and some things to consider. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and he's going to talk about ways to reduce costs.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Tom Tanvir. And yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different ways to, as Tom Tanvir kind of laid out, to get more revenue out of your properties. And a lot of it are ways that you can really work alongside tenants, add value to them, explain to them, hey, I've had some pet damage in the past, so we charge this pet fee to make sure that we recoup any potential damage. We think it's reasonable based on the area, justify your, give your explanation, et cetera. So there's tons of great ways you can get more money out of your properties right now, but there are also a lot of great ways that you can reduce the cost. So the money you are getting from your property stays in your pocket and doesn't go out to taxes or to various expenses or utility companies or whatever it may be. So we're going to run through some of those today. And the first one that we're going to cover is how you can lower your utility costs. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. First of all, green appliances, right? Make sure that when you're purchasing new appliances for your property, that you're targeting Energy Star efficient appliances, right? The dishwasher that uses less water, the refrigerator that uses less electricity. Consider that as part of it, especially if you're covering utility bills, right? If you're covering the energy cost, if you're covering the water bill for the property, it's important that you make sure that you're paying attention to that. So get green appliances. And the other piece of this is actually educating your tenants. So you can tell your tenants things like, hey, it's actually, if you run your sink, your faucet for 2 minutes, cleaning up dishes, the equivalent of a full cycle on your dishwasher, right? Just run your dishwasher. Run it every night or run it whenever you need to, instead of running the water out of the sink. Little things like that, little educational pieces can go a long way in helping reduce your utility costs and ultimately your tenant's utility costs for anything they're paying for. Another one is to insulate your windows. As we're getting colder and colder, this becomes more and more important, at least certainly here in Ohio where we are. It was down to like 20 degrees today, 15 degrees today. So insulated windows are a big deal. If you have old wooden windows, especially that are not very energy efficient, you may want to put a thin layer of plastic up on those windows or instruct your tenants to do so, or even just come in once a year and have your handyman take care of that, knock that out. It's going to reduce that energy bill, not just for their unit, but for every other unit in the building. Because if there's any place for that heat to escape, it's going to find its way out. So it's important to try to keep it all solid and insulated throughout. That's a really good one. Another one that is fairly obvious, but I can't tell you how many landlords fail to do this, is to regularly change your air filters. Whenever I go and look at a new property, I always check out the furnace, of course, but I don't just look at, they have that sticker the last time it was serviced or installed. I also check out the air filter. If the air filter is covered, if it doesn't look like it's been changed in 2 years, then this furnace is maybe not going to be in great shape, right? It not only makes your property more energy efficient, so it's going to lower those utility bills, but it also makes the furnace last longer, which ultimately is going to mean savings in the long run. So be sure to change those air filters, whether it's purchasing the filters for your tenants and having them do it every 3 months, which is pretty typical, or going around and doing it yourself. It's a very good habit, a very important habit to be in. Another one is changing light bulbs. I'm sure all of us know about LED light bulbs at this point. Might not know the numbers though. An LED light bulb uses about $2, less than $2 really, it's like $1.80 of energy per year if they're run for 10 hours a day. So if they're run quite a bit, they're going to use about $1.80, about $2. An incandescent bulb, conversely, is going to use $11 over the same period. Now that's not huge on an individual level, right? $9 in savings. But if you have multiple properties, if you have multiple apartments, multiple single family homes, you may have hundreds of light bulbs, and that can represent significant savings over time. An LED light bulb can last up to 25 years versus an incandescent that's like 6 months to a year. So that's going to add up to quite a bit in savings just going around and changing your light bulbs. It's a big task to do all at once, but if you make a day of it, if you say, hey, I'm going to hit all my properties and change all these light bulbs, you could save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that year alone. So especially here at the turn of the year, this is a good time to focus on that. Make sure you swap out those light bulbs. If you have control over it, shady landscaping, right? If you can put a tree in place, it's going to shade some of the windows, keep the heat out. If you can put big bushes in place that are going to keep the heat out. Anything little that you can do, especially for new construction, think about the landscaping and how that impacts the overall efficiency of your property. Also your water heater. So your water heater has different settings on it. Many of you may be aware. You can set it to a lower heating setting. It can be medium, it can be low. Typically that's plenty of heat for most apartments, for most homes. Lower it down. The tenants don't need scorching hot water. It'll still probably be plenty. You may want to check in with them to make sure it's still enough hot water, but it more than likely is. And finally, you can use a water heater blanket, which is just what it sounds like. It's a blanket that you can buy special ones, but you can honestly buy like any blanket as long as it's not, going to catch on fire. Make sure it'll handle the heat there. But you can wrap that blanket around the water heater, and it'll significantly reduce the amount of gas or electricity, depending on the water heater, that it's going to use to keep that water hot. It actually makes a decent sized difference in your energy bill, especially in those cold months. All right. We're going to switch gears and talk about some financial expenses related to taxes and other things, but this is also where we're going to do our third poll question. So Alexandra, you can take it away.
Okay, let me get that up here. Oh, this is a good one. Do you use a CPA for your rental properties? Two options there. I'm curious to see how many of you do it on your own, especially with tax season coming up. Yeah. All right, I'm going to wait till it gets to about 60-70% of you who have answered. All right, looks like we're meeting that threshold already. Thank you guys for being so engaged on this. That was quick. I'm going to go ahead and end it and share the results. Looks like most of you use a CPA, 65% of you.
Awesome. That is great to see. But even 35%, I'm telling you, it's too many folks not using a CPA. A CPA is such an important part of your team as a real estate investor. A CPA, it depends on your market, of course, but they're going to cost you anywhere from a couple $100 to, short of $1,000. They're going to save you way, way, way more than that, both in your tax season prep and also in your long-term planning. So it's critical that you have a CPA in your team. And when you're evaluating CPAs are like lawyers. There's tons of different specializations. So make sure that you're finding a CPA that really knows real estate and knows personal income, or knows whatever unique facet of your business, right? If you're doing it a little differently than other folks. So make sure you find a CPA that's going to be a match there. Meet with them. They'll usually do a free consult. Sit down with them, talk through it. They're going to find a ton of money that's waiting for you. And they're also going to give you that kind of stamp of approval that makes you feel a little more protected against Uncle Sam if the IRS comes a knocking for an audit or anything like that. So they'll both save you more money, they'll protect you in the future, and they'll help you plan for that future. So it's a really incredible asset to have. Now, a CPA is great, and they're really important. It's also important that you're aware of some of the tax breaks you have access to. CPAs, of course, will do a good job putting things in front of you, but if you're not preparing yourself for some of those tax breaks, you may miss out on them. There's a lot of different clauses you can use. There's the home office exclusion that a lot of people are taking advantage of here during COVID, where we're all working from home. There's significant savings in that. The de minimis clause that you can use to really reduce, how much revenue the IRS sees you bringing in. You can take a lot of investments like buying a new fridge as an operating expense. It's not appreciated over time. It comes in directly as an operating expense and lowers that tax bill. There's a ton of advantages you have at your disposal from a tax standpoint. Familiarize yourself just a little bit. You don't need to be an expert on it, but get to know the big ticket items and make sure you're prepared with an understanding of those or questions about those for that CPA you're going to meet with. So I cannot recommend enough working with a CPA. I do for my rental properties, and we love it. We have a great relationship, and it makes life really, really easy. Next up on the financial expenses side is challenging your property tax assessment. A lot of people think that the property tax assessment comes down from the heavens, from the county auditor, and whatever it is, and that is simply not the case. You live in a representative democracy, and they are working at your behest, right? So if you believe that the tax assessment you've been given is too high, you can challenge it. To do so, you're going to want to do some research, right? Look at the other tax bills that other properties and other similar properties are paying in your area. If you really think you have a strong case for significant savings, you might even want to hire an appraiser to come out, take a look at the property and give their professional assessment. That's going to offer even further evidence in your appeal when you do deliver it to ensure that you win that appeal and that you do lower your tax assessment. And this can be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in savings, not just this year, but years into the future. So it's really worthwhile if you do think there's a gap there on your tax assessment. And the final one, which is one that a lot of people have been doing in the past couple of years, is refinancing, taking advantage of these great low rates. The general rule of thumb, and it is just kind of a rule of thumb, is about 0.5%. So if you're at 3.5 and you get quoted by a mortgage lender at 3% or lower, that's going to be worth it. If it's anything in between there, it gets a little bit cloudier just because there's going to be all these fees for closing. It's going to have to be reappraised. All these little things are going to have to occur that do add up and diminish some of the return on that 0.5% savings. So if it's more than 0.5%, I say do it. If it's less than 0.5%, just really think long and hard about it if it makes sense to refinance. But it can offer significant savings over time. So it's well worth it if it does make sense for you. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about turnover and different strategies to minimize turnover. Now, one of the most important things that you can do as a landlord is to find good tenants. And hopefully, if you've been around for a little while, you have found some. Hopefully, you have some good ones right now. One of the best ways to make that a repeatable process is to talk to those good tenants, to think about where those good tenants came from. If you do a self-evaluation, you find, man, all of my best tenants have come from this local newspaper that I advertise in, and these folks are the absolute best. Well, maybe shift all of your marketing efforts towards that local newspaper. Whenever you need a new tenant, just market there, right? It's not just about where can I find a renter, it's about where can I find a good renter. So think about that, take that into consideration. And also talk to those good renters, especially the ones that are leaving. Find out why they're leaving. Maybe they need a bigger property. Maybe they're starting a family, but maybe it's something to do with the unit that you have or the way that the properties have been managed. Find out what those things are. You don't want those good tenants to walk away, and learning from them will help you keep future good tenants to stick around. And what you might learn is that it's time to upgrade the property. We talked about this a little bit on the increased rent, but it also has the flip side of keeping those good tenants really, really satisfied and attracting the best tenants. There's all sorts of different ways you can upgrade the property. But again, listen to your tenants, survey your tenants, maybe annually, maybe whenever they leave. Find out what they're looking for, what would make your property even more appealing to them. Okay. Next up, you can give discounts. So if you need to keep somebody around, I know this happened a lot during COVID, you can offer discounts, right? Maybe waive a half month's rent or spread that month. This was a really common strategy we saw with folks that use Innago. They would take, let's say it was, April when COVID hit 2020, they would take that April rent and they'd say, hey, don't worry about April right now. We're going to, starting in July, we're going to spread that over 6 months. So you'll pay an extra, $150 July, August, September, October, et cetera. We'll spread that out. We'll give you some relief right now. That can be a small gesture that goes a really long way with your tenants. It can feel like a big relief. So it doesn't even have to be an official credit or an official discount. It can even just be something that's spread out. Let them know that you're working with them. Let them know that you're trying to keep them around. That can be for your existing tenants if there's a global pandemic going on, but it can also be for tenants that are considering moving or thinking about walking away. If they're about to move, they're going to have to hire movers, which costs couple $100, right? They're going to have to collect all their stuff together. They got to pay a new security deposit. They got all these problems that are going to arise from moving. Maybe saying, hey, I'll take $100 off your rent is enough to tip the scales in your direction. So it's definitely something worth considering if they truly are a great tenant for you. Next up is collecting rent electronically. Surveys show that 80% plus of tenants want to pay rent online. They want to have some sort of interactive communication channel that is digital. Most people are on their phones these days. They don't want to drop off a check. It's less convenient. They're going to pay on time less frequently. They're going to forget it. They're going to hit with late fees. There's all sorts of negatives from the tenant's perspective. Answer 80% of your clientele, right? Do what 80%, especially when it's as easy as it is these days. Do what 80% of your clientele is asking you for. It's important to offer online rental collection these days to really modernize your business. And finally, remember special dates. One thing that I like to do with my rental properties is we keep it pretty simple. We keep it around the holidays, around Christmas and New Year's. We like to give a $50 gift card or a $25 gift card, depending on kind of the unit and who's living there and the location and everything, to a local restaurant. We'll say, hey, this is one of our favorite local restaurants. Happy holidays. We'd love for you to go and try it yourselves and enjoy a nice meal, take some, go on a date, whatever it is. That's a really small thing, right? It's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. $50 on a $1,200 rent is pretty minuscule. If we just gave that as a credit on their rent, it's not that meaningful. I mean, it's nice. Sure, they're like, oh, great. That's nice. That's cool that you did that for the holidays. But if you give them a gift card, it feels like more. It feels different. It feels like something that's really thoughtful. And it really goes a long way. We've gotten thank you notes from tenants from doing that. I don't think we get a thank you note for putting a $50 credit on a $1,200 on a $1,200 rental invoice. So doing that kind of thing, remembering special dates, make it a holiday tradition, maybe the day that they moved in. If you know their birthday, which you probably do with your screening process, you could do it for that. Any of those little things show that you really care about them as tenants, that you want them to stick around, and that you have a great relationship with them. And again, it can go a really long way in keeping them there. Okay, the flip side of minimizing tenant turnover is also decreasing vacancies. Now, this actually goes back to the tenant turnover piece as well, but vacancy is really, really expensive. If a tenant leaves one of your properties and you need to fill a new tenant into that slot, into that unit, it's going to cost you. And it's not just the obvious cost, right? Oh, it's not that expensive. I just buy a bucket of paint and I, get some spackle. I plug up some holes in the wall. I make sure everything's working and I'm good to go, right? Maybe I spend $50 in advertising costs. It's a lot more than that, right? If somebody moves out on January 31st, the chances that you're going to have a new tenant moving in on February 1st are pretty low. I mean, it's done. I've done it before. It's hectic. It's stressful. It can happen, but it's not super common, right? More commonly, the next tenant's moving in middle of the month, February 15th, or they're moving in at the beginning of the next month. And if they're moving in middle of the month or some other date, you're prorating rent. So you're losing out on that rental income. If they don't occupy it the whole next month, you're losing a whole month's worth of income. Maybe it's a tough market. Maybe somebody moved out on a month-to-month lease in January and not a lot of people rent in February. So now you're sitting on it for a few months. Those are hidden costs. You're not writing a check for $1,200 rent every month, but you're not getting the check for $1,200 rent every month either. And that is an expense. That's lost income for you. So when you add it all up, the cost of lost rent, the cost of searching for new tenants, advertising costs, the time that it takes you to go through all this stuff, the work that you have to put into the property, the little maintenance stuff that you need to do, all those costs add up. The studies show an average of, on the very low end, $1,000 to the higher end over $4,000. The average is somewhere in the middle. I've seen a lot of people quote like $2,300 for that cost. So even though a lot of those costs are hidden and you're not seeing them, they're not coming out of your checkbook, they're not showing up as a line item on your expenses sheet, they're still expensive. It's still revenue. It's still profit that's out of your pocket. So you want to, as much as possible, lower your vacancy time, lower your turnover, right? And some of the best ways to do that are to be proactive, be prepared and be proactive. Reach out to your tenants, find out when they're planning on moving. The turn of the year, the new year, is a great time to check in with them. Say, hey, how are things going? Are you liking the rentals? That's a good time to collect questions like, what are things you really like? What are things you don't like? What are some improvements we can make? But you can also ask them, hey, what's your long-term plan? How long do you think that you'll be here, right? And get an idea. Oh, I'm going to be moving out in 3 months. Sure, maybe your lease requires that they notify you 30 days before, but now you have 60 extra days of notice to really be prepared and proactive and plan for turning that unit quickly. Maybe you can come in and start to do some of the repairs beforehand. Maybe you can start to do some of the advertising and showings well ahead of time. Maybe you decide you want to convert it into a corporate housing like Tom here mentioned, right? This is a great time to plan all that out. So be prepared, be proactive, and establish kind of a game plan for turning those units over quickly. You also want to maximize your marketing efforts. Maximize the marketing efforts that work for you. Again, it's not just about finding tenants. It's about finding good tenants. So figure out which channels those are and hit them really, really hard. Get as much advertising out there as you can within those channels to fill that unit as quickly as possible. It might feel expensive to pay $100 to fill a unit versus $50. But if the $50 channel is going to take a month longer, or it's going to take even 10 days longer, it's going to bring in a bad tenant, it's not worth it. $50 is easily worth it to have a good tenant in quickly. So think about that. Review that. Make sure that you're hitting the right channels in the right way and really maximizing those marketing efforts. And the last piece that's not even on here is consider using any tools that are going to speed this process up for you. Again, if your normal process is like, oh, I send them an application and they print it out and they fill it out and they scan it and they send it back to me, and then it's leasing time, so I got to send them the same thing on a lease, and they print it out and they review it and they sign it and they send it back to me and I sign. That can turn into a week's worth of time just to get that finished. These days, there's plenty of tools out there, property management software, Innago being one of them, that'll allow you to screen your tenants, that'll allow you to go through the leasing process and sign it digitally. AOA has a tool that'll also assist you with the screening piece. There's all sorts of tools out there that can make this so much faster for you. Go and find one. It's going to speed up the time that you fill your units. It's going to reduce your vacancy time. It's going to truly, truly save you real dollars in the long run. So it's well worth it. Okay, last category here is to reduce expenses. So we talked about some utility expenses. These are more general expenses, right? Different strategies you can implement. One of those is to manage the property yourself. I would assume that many people on this webinar, given your affiliation with AOA, you probably do this. Hopefully many of you do this. It's a great way to learn the trade. It's a great way to keep your, fingers on the pulse of the business, to know what's going on. We really encourage folks to at least try it for a little while. Ultimately, maybe you outgrow it, or maybe it's not the right fit for you, but even getting some exposure to managing your properties yourself is going to benefit you tremendously in the long run. And the beauty of it is it reduces your expenses in the short term. So right now, if you take on management, you're suddenly no longer paying 8 to 12% in fees to a property management company, right? That's significant savings right there immediately. You can also control some of your costs. What are you spending on? What types of maintenance are you doing? Make sure you're doing a really, really good job with that management process. Now, there's of course pros and cons, right? The pros are obvious. You are going to learn the trade better. You're going to reduce your costs that you're spending. The cons are that you are going to, have a little bit more risk there, right? If it's your first time managing a property, maybe you don't know the right answers, maybe you kind of screw something up. Those risks aren't huge. There's tons of resources out there, AOA being one of the best, to help you in that transition and in that process. So we always encourage folks, try it for at least a little while. Maybe you like it, maybe it's super manageable, but at least give it a shot for a little bit, just to get a feel for it. The next one, which really goes hand in hand with that, because you'll be able to more easily do this if you're managing your properties, is to minimize your maintenance costs. So this means spend time doing things that are going to make your appliances and make the things that you've invested in last longer, right? It's more about maintaining, it's more about minor repairs than it is about replacing. A great example is the air filter thing, right? Changing that air filter every 3 months is going to make your furnace last significantly longer and reduce your energy bill. That's well worth the investment of your time and of your money, right? Similarly, Tanvir mentioned telling your cleaning crew to clean the coils on major appliances like a fridge. That's going to extend the life of that fridge. It's going to last longer for you, right? You're not going to have to pay $1,500, $1,000, $800, whatever it is for your new fridge when the time comes, right? So little things go a long way over time to reduce your costs. And then finally, choosing the right property management software. If you are choosing to manage the properties on your own, it is absolutely imperative that you have property management software in place. It's going to save you so much time. It's going to give you significantly more control over your business, and it's going to help you in X number of ways. Now, we, of course, at Innago offer property management software, and we think it's a great set of features. I use it for my properties. Tanvir uses it for his. Thousands of landlords across the country use it. But regardless, if you find Innago is not the right fit, there's property management software out there that is, and you should be using it. You can find free software, you can find expensive software, you can find software that fits exactly what you're looking for. And it's important that you go out and look for it, because it's going to save you time, and it's ultimately going to save you money in the long run. So we would like to transition and kind of just talk a little bit about Innago and how Innago can specifically help with some of the things that we've covered today. First of all, Innago is going to reduce expenses, especially for you AOA members. We're really proud with our partnership with AOA and that you can access Innago free of charge. There's no cost at all for you as a landlord to use Innago. So in that way, it's obviously going to reduce any expenses you're paying for existing property management software or an existing property manager if it's offering you sufficient tooling to transition away from that. So it's going to offer you significant savings on the expense front. When you're evaluating property management software, not just Innago, you want to look for the features that they offer. You want to look for the pricing, right? Is it free, or does the cost make sense for my business? And you're also going to want to look up reviews. Let other people do the work for you, okay? What have they thought of this software that you're considering using? So those are really the big three things, and we're going to cover each of those separately here, both within the context of Innago and the larger context of the property management space. First of all, features to look out for. Rent collection is a critical one I mentioned before. 80% of tenants want rent collection, right? It's important that you offer it. It's important that you let them pay online. Some want to pay with their bank, some want to pay with a credit card or a debit card, whatever it is. Make sure that it's included in whichever software you choose. It's a foundational piece of any property management software. The next one is tenant screening. It's important to have a screening service, a screening tool built into your software, built into your workflow at the very least. You know, if you're using AOA screening, make sure that it's going to work for you well and kind of integrate well with the rest of the processes that you do, and it certainly should. an important piece of managing your properties. Next is lease management, knowing the dates when things are expiring, getting reminders, sending reminders to tenants. It's a really critical piece. Financial reporting. I talked about the CPA earlier. I can tell you that at the end of the year, I just did this the other day, I pull all of my reports from Innago. I have an income report, I have an expenses report, and I have a P&L report. I download all three of them. It takes me about a minute and a half, 30 seconds on each page. And I email those three reports to my CPA. And I am done with taxes. That's it. It's over. I just send them off. Now, sometimes he reaches out and he says, Dave, what did you categorize here? What is this? This doesn't even make sense to me. Or you put it in the wrong spot, or we need to tweak this slightly. But, that's 5 or 6 line items a year. It's not a ton of effort, right? It's really easy. He loves it. It's easier for him. I love it. It's significantly easier for me. It's a great tool for managing that tax piece and the financial reporting piece. And it also lets you know throughout the year the health of your business, which units are performing well, which units aren't performing well, where expenses are creeping up, et cetera. So financial reporting is a really big piece. Then tenant communication, being able to talk to your tenants, being able to manage those conversations in one single place, and letting your tenants feel like they're being heard. Maintenance management, managing work orders, taking pictures and videos. These are all tools that any good property management software is going to offer to you. Also, the ability to assign those maintenance tickets to different staff or people that help you out. And finally, document signing. As I mentioned, you can reduce your vacancy time if you're moving these processes online. Document signing is one big piece of that puzzle, right? So if you can sign digitally from anywhere, your tenants are going to be signing much faster and much more easily. Inaugo offers all these features, but really any property management software you're looking for, make sure that these features are offered. Next up are some more off the beaten path features, still really important, but maybe more or less important for you depending on your business and your structure. One is a mobile app. So many landlords these days are constantly on the move, whether they're a full-time landlord that's bouncing from property to property, or they've got a 9-to-5 and they're often in the office or working on other stuff. They don't have the ability to just boot up a laptop and be in their property management software. So being able to access it from your phone is really critical, really, really helpful. Same with your tenants. Make sure that there is an app and a great experience for your tenants as well. Next up is rental advertising. A lot of property management software these days allows you to syndicate to various platforms. We connect with a few different ones. One of our best partnerships is with Realtor.com. We love working with those guys, and you can publish your listings directly from Innago to Realtor and their whole family of sites. Lots of different property management software is going to include this. Make sure that the fit is right for you. Multi-user management. If you do manage multiple people, if you have maintenance staff, if you have property managers, et cetera, it's useful to be able to integrate them into your software. Renters insurance. If you're not using renters insurance, this is a potential expense waiting down the line. If a tenant, let's say a tenant causes some damage in their unit, and it's so substantial that it not only damages their unit, but it also damages the unit below them, right? It damages some of their stuff. They fry their TV or they ruin their couch or whatever it may be. And there's thousands of dollars in damage to this other tenant's stuff. Your insurance can be called in to cover that, right? And that's going to raise your premium. That's going to, obviously, you're going to cover the deductible. It can be thousands of dollars out of pocket for you. If you simply force your tenants to get a renter's insurance policy, you're completely protected in that situation. That's all you need to do. You can make them get renter's insurance outside of property management software, but many platforms these days integrate both the purchasing service and the management of those renter's insurance policies all in one place. And it's a super useful set of features for you. And finally, responsive support. Make sure that whatever you choose is going to respond to you, that they're going to help you, that they're going to guide you and lead the way, especially as you're getting started out. Test their support. Don't just make a jump decision based on something that looks good online. Test that support, reach out to them, see if they get back to you quickly, see if they take care of any issues or questions you have. It's going to pay off in the long run if you have good support. And again, Inaugo offers all these. We're really proud to say, but they're all things that, depending on your business, may or may not be more important. Make sure whatever software you choose has them if they are important to you, and has them in the ways that matter for you. Next up, pricing. As I mentioned, we're proud for our AOA members. Inaugo is free to use. There's no setup fee, no monthly fee, no contract. We are going to charge for two things in Inaugo. One is screening reports. If you run them through Inaugo, the applicant is going to pay for those, so it's not charged to you as a landlord. And secondly is payments that are made online. So if your tenants do pay online, we're going to charge them $2 for a bank transfer. We're going to charge them 2.75% for a credit or debit card transfer if they choose that method. You as a landlord can take on either of those fees if you want to. by default, they're paid by your tenants, and it's totally free for you. So again, the expense on your end is minimal or totally free, and very reasonable costs for your tenants there. And finally, reviews. We're big believers in Capterra, G2 Crowd, and Trustpilot. These are 3 platforms online that actually really vet the reviews. So they make sure that reviewers are really using the platform. They go to some pretty crazy lengths to ensure that that's the case. G2 Crowd, for example, makes you validate like work emails and stuff. I mean, it's a little intense, to be honest, but the beauty of it is that you know that the reviews that you're looking at are really authentic. They're truly people that use the platform. And we've got great reviews on all 3: Capterra 4.9, G2 Crowd 5.0, Trustpilot 4.9. Whatever platform you choose, we suggest looking at these and seeing what the reviews look like, what people are saying about it. There's other review sites you can use too, and those are going to be helpful. But just understand that these are typically the most authoritative because of the way that they vet the people that leave the reviews. So be sure to do some research, let other people do the work for you, find out what people like, what they don't like. And I think that's about it. Tom, did I miss anything? Anything else we got to hit before we go to Q&A?
No, Dave, I don't think so. I think we're good to move on.
Cool.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that was a great presentation. I saw that so many of you were going back and forth in the chat, super active. However, if we have not answered a question that you put in the chat that you would like us to answer for you, please put it in the Q&A, and that way we can make sure to get to it because chat's just going crazy. So I'm going to go over to Q&A and start with some of the questions that we have in there. So at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned corporate housing as an option for some additional revenue. Can that be rented out at a premium? Is that what you've seen in your experience?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Absolutely. Definitely with corporate housing, they want the property to be fully furnished. So most properties, when you rent them out, they're not fully furnished. So you want to add that into the cost. Definitely take a look, as I said, at the market that you're in. Obviously, New York and California corporate housing is going to be a little more expensive than the state of Ohio, where we're at. So take a look at the market. You definitely want to charge a premium because it's furnished, and make an educated decision based on that.
That's good advice. You could also charge more for the security deposit if it's furnished in most places. All right. Can a new buyer increase the rent of a 4-unit building, even though the seller just increased the rent the month before? This is from Regina. She's in Orange County. So this is under California's Tenant Protection Act. And I would say, no, you cannot. You'd have to honor that last increase, and then you would need to wait another year to increase it again. I believe that's how it goes. Is that your understanding of it as well? I know we're not attorneys, but that's sort of what I've been understanding of the California law lately.
Yeah, typically that's, and this is true for most locations, really. It does depend. So you can check with, a local real estate association or a local attorney, but generally, yeah, you have to honor whatever lease is in place. The only real exception that you can do when you're taking ownership is if you want to occupy one of the units yourself. There are you can get around some rules that typically force you to honor leases, but that's really the only exception that I see regularly.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Okay, from Shelley, does the Innago software work with multiple properties, including types of properties, including commercial properties?
Yeah, we do. We work with all different sorts, and there's some funny different kinds of landlords that work with us too. Like a lot of salons have started using Innago, and they rent out their chairs to different hairdressers. So we work with all different sorts. Certainly, commercial is a big part of our business.
I guess if you can rent it, you can use Innago.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
All right, very cool. So from Mo, asking your opinion on a solar system installation, does that help with additional income? Does it have a benefit from what you've seen?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on the quoted price. So there are a lot of incentives in place, a lot of tax incentives that can reduce the cost of solar. Oftentimes, from a financial standpoint, just straight up, it's usually about net even over time because you're going to invest more dollars up front, and then obviously you'll get savings over time. But the big thing to think about is how it's going to impact the property itself, right? So if you live in an area with a lot of young people, millennials want those types of things in place. You can probably raise the rent. You can advertise the heck out of that. Say, hey, we're solar powered. Your utility bills gone. Now we're charging 200 extra bucks above market, but you're not paying any electricity bill and you can feel good about the energy that you are using. So the impact is going to be larger on the marketing side and your ultimate rental price than it is over time savings with the investment that's required for solar. But it does net typically even, so it's not a huge cost to get started up.
Okay. Also, from Mr. and Mrs. Davis here, how do you force a tenant to get renter's insurance? When does that come up in negotiations?
Yeah, so I would say with renter's insurance, you want to actually put that in your lease before a new tenant signs the lease with your property. That's the best way to put it in. That's what I do for my properties. I know Dave does the same for his. That way, Innago, we offer renters insurance so they can, use Innago, use another system out there. But as long as it's in your lease documentation, then you can enforce it. Without it being in your lease documentation, again, Dave and I are not lawyers, so this isn't legal advice, but I think it'd be a lot harder to enforce.
Yeah, I agree. Typically having some sort of proof of that renter's insurance is required by large property management companies that rent to their tenants. Literally they won't hand you a key without showing that you have it. And there's a reason why they do that, right? So it's important for us all to get on board with that. From Kai here, can Innago produce 1099s for our vendors?
We do not produce 1099s. You can get a lot of the information out of Innago to make it really quick to create those yourself, but we're not going to actually generate 1099s ourselves.
Right. Kai says also that he's using Tenant Cloud right now, and he's asking if you can easily import or migrate the data that they have there into Innago.
Yes, you can. It's not going to be done by you, Kai. It'll be done by our support team on the back end. But basically what we'll ask for is some data from you from Tenant Cloud. And then a customer support member will work with you to get that data migrated.
Okay, great. Someone else asking about air filters and air filter delivery services. We actually had someone working with us. There's a vendor called Filter 6. So Filter 6, they will actually, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. They will actually schedule out and deliver to you air filters on a schedule. You could pay for it yourself. They're pretty cheap, or you could build a tenant for it if you want. But it comes to the door every, so many months, so you don't have to worry about it. Also, can we store tenant information like leases, driver's license, etc. in Innago?
Yeah, absolutely. All that info.
All right, great. And does Innago include accounting and bookkeeping features with the software so that they can track maintenance and expenses?
So for bookkeeping, yes. For income and expenses, you definitely can track that in Innago. Just want to be transparent with you. People look at the word accounting differently. So we have income and expenses. We do not have full integrated accounting with a general ledger and a chart of accounts. But our workaround there is we integrate with QuickBooks Online for that. But I would take a look at the software first, because just because you think you need accounting, it might just be the income and expenses that you're looking for.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I use Innago for all of my accounting needs. I don't use anything else, and I just send everything off to the CPA at the end of the year. Some people need more than that or want more than that, but Innago typically has enough for most folks.
Okay, Carol was asking about a lease agreement. AAOA does have forms. So if you did want to have a very state-specific 2022 updated lease, I would suggest that you go to AAOA.com. In the menu, you'll see legal forms, and you can see there all the forms that would be included with your membership. I think that's really important to have an updated lease if you are, starting something new this year, and it's $30 to do it. So, and that's not just the lease, it's like a bunch of other forms too that you'll get along with that.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's why, Alexander, we actually don't, the user can upload any document they want to be signed in Innago. So we encourage you to go check out those AOA documents. You can still use those within Innago and have them executed and signed, and make sure that they're up to date with AOA for your state, and then use it to be signed in Innago.
I absolutely love that feature. And I've referred people over to Innago for that document signing process, because we actually don't have that. It makes it a lot easier when you do have that lease to just, quickly send them a link. They sign it electronically. no need
Right.
to print it out, you know? Okay,
Exactly.
great. A couple questions about how the heck is Inaugo free, which I'm sure you guys get that question all the time. I know you mentioned it, but let's maybe give people a refresher as to how it's free.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, we are totally free and we have no um, plan. Everything that we've talked about today, everything that Dave went over is totally free on your end. How we monetize our software, right? What pays the bill for Dave and I to be here today is we charge your tenants, and we charge your tenants for three different things. The first is online payments. The second is renters insurance. And last but not least is tenant screening. So all three of those features are available, and we'd love for you to use all of them, but you do not have to use all of them in order to use Inaugo.
Yeah, you don't have to use any of them. You can absolutely use any piece of Inaugo. So
All right. Yeah, I like that as well. So, you know, you don't have to worry about paying a monthly fee. I mean, Rocky here is asking, how does Inaugo compare with an Appfolio or those kind of softwares? I mean, that's really one of the main differences, obviously, is it's free. Do you have anything else to add to that in terms of the comparison there?
yeah, so Appfolio, just as one example, is we call these guys legacy players, folks that have been around for quite a while. It's a great piece of software. It's typically designed pretty far upstream, meaning it's working with significantly larger landlords with very complicated processes, right? Maybe they have a full staff that can learn how to use Appfolio. You're going to generally find that Inaugo is significantly easier to pick up and start using, that it's going to offer you most, if not all, or more than the tooling that you need to manage your properties, and it's going to do it for free. So generally a lot easier to use, and obviously the cost reduction. So before you jump to something like Appfolio, we strongly encourage you to look at Inaugo or other less expensive software, just to make sure it's not going to be, a fit for you at a significantly lower cost.
I know I had spoken to you guys about a potential mobile app coming out for Inaugo. Someone's asking, like, what are the ways that you can access your software? Have you guys made any progress on that?
Yeah. So we do have a mobile app for landlords and tenants. So you can go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and download the app. We also are available on desktop. So, just go on your phone's web browser, computer, your iPad, your tablet's web browser, go to Inaugo.com and just click the button up in the right-hand corner that says sign up free.
Okay, great. Asking here, James, our property may be getting rezoned for higher density. Is it generally worth the effort of building additional units, or is it better to sell the property to someone else who would do that work?
That is a great question. It's very hard to answer that.
Very hard.
Yeah, it's very hard to. I would definitely investigate that idea. First of all, do you have access to the capital to make that happen, right? Can you refinance the property? Do you have enough equity in it to cover all that with very little out of pocket? Do you have the out of pocket money to make that happen? I would certainly bring in contractors to look into the cost of what that's going to be. And also, what's the going rate within the market if you want to sell it? If your money is going to do more work by selling than by improving the property, go sell it. Go find a new property. Take all those earnings and 1031 exchange it for another property elsewhere, and you don't have to worry about the headache. It's hard to answer that question, but I think it definitely merits a lot of investigation. I would look into it for sure.
Okay, from Javier, he says, I feel like giving the option to pay rent with a credit card might not be a good way to go, as the tenants might get into a lot of debt and not pay rent in the long run. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So first of all, giving your tenants more options is typically never a bad thing, right? And there's a variety of different reasons a tenant may choose to pay with a credit card. For example, if a tenant is getting 3% cash back on every dollar that they spend, they're actually making money when they pay their rent with a credit card, right? Or if they're in a tight spot because of COVID, that extends their life by a month, extends their balance sheet by a month, and then they can get everything back on track. That's actually a huge reprieve for them. They can avoid a late fee and pay a very small credit card cost instead. There's lots of different reasons that a tenant may choose to use a credit card. If you have a tenant that's regularly paying with a credit card, and in software like Inaugo, you can filter to that and check on it, you might just want to touch base with them. Hey, I see that you're using your credit card a lot. What's going on? Is everything good? They might say, oh no, I just like paying with my credit card. It's a lot easier. Finances are great over here. Nothing to worry about there. Certainly there can be instances where somebody is in a debt situation, but we have very low instances of credit card issues in our system with all the volume that runs through it. And I think that's pretty typical for most property management software. So generally it's going to be a benefit. It's like retail people choosing to offer credit cards because more people can pay more easily, generally a benefit for all, but certainly something that you can monitor if you're concerned with your clientele.
That's great. From Lewis, and I know that I saw so much in the chat about this whole raising rent dilemma that a lot of landlords have. Lewis says the raising the rent question almost doesn't apply here in the LA, Los Angeles area that's under rent control. Plus the city of LA has eliminated any rent increases during the pandemic, which is coming up on 2 years. The real question becomes, how do you make up for this lost revenue? And Lewis, I would say it's like literally everything we've covered in the presentation of how to really add additional revenue streams without increasing the rent. Now, if you can increase the rent, then I would suggest that you do, although the amount that you increase it will sort of depend on, obviously, if there's rent control in your area, and also, how good the tenant has been over the course of the last year. Is that, something where you might go a little easy on them, but ultimately you don't want to get stuck so far behind market rent that you can't raise it back and then you're really underselling your rental. I think there's some ways that you can incentivize tenants, but you have to be smart about it and reasonable. So that's sort of my take on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well, Dave and Tanbir.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Alexandra. What I like to do anytime there's considerations of increasing rent is to really talk to the tenants and explain to them why, right? Here's why we're increasing the rent. Here's how to justify it. This is the other market, the rest of the market, how it's performing based on, your performance as a tenant, right? Here's some damage that you did. Here's some bills that we've had to pay because of some stuff that you did. All those little things create a case for why it's justified that you're raising that rent. So I think that making the case, really communicating with your tenants is an important piece of the process, but everything else you said, Alexandra, I totally agree with.
Great. Tammy is asking here, on Innago, can you allow automatic rent collection via a checking account only and not allow them to do a credit card payment?
Got it. Yeah, it's not possible to turn off credit card as an option. You can certainly instruct your tenants, hey, I don't want you paying with the credit card. And as I mentioned, you can monitor how they paid. You're going to get notified every time a tenant pays if you want to. And it'll tell them their method, right? So you can keep track of, hey, you're paying with a credit card. I asked you, please not to do that. They could cancel the payment, resubmit, et cetera. But it's not possible to turn it off as a channel for the tenants to pay entirely.
Okay. Related to that, James asking, how do you handle issues with credit card chargebacks? Have you had that, happen at Inaugo?
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. So yeah, I mean, just probably like any other business, 99% of all transactions in Inaugo go through without an issue. There's always going to be that 1% with issues. How we handle it is we will alert you whenever there is an issue, and we will work with your tenant to submit a repayment or to get those, get whatever issue there was mitigated. And then after, let's say that there's another payment issue, then we'll talk to you and the tenant about maybe not offering online payments or putting them on a consistent 3-day hold. So there's a few ways that we use it. But again, we are going to take control of the issue, so you won't have to worry about managing that issue.
Yeah, and I actually was just looking over these numbers the other day. So we do, tens of thousands of transactions per month flow through our platform. And of those, over the course of the last year, we had 70 total chargebacks that occurred. That's all. So the percentage of chargebacks is very, very small. And even when they do happen, as Tanvir mentioned, we kind of get a plan in place immediately. We're also willing to fight chargebacks on your behalf if you can provide us with the necessary evidence. So things like having a lease agreement in place or having a history of other payments that they've made or any proof that they've occupied that rental go a really, really long way in fighting a chargeback. And we win them all the time. So even of those 70, we won many. Oftentimes, as long as the landlord provides us with that information. So it's not happening much. It's really not a huge issue. And when it does happen, we'll work with you to try to deal with it as best we can.
Okay, that's good to know. We are a little over on time and the questions keep coming. So I see a couple more that I might want to touch on. Carol, but then I think maybe we should answer these offline. Carol is asking any advice if you manage your own properties, but you're going to be away for several months. Let's say you hire a property manager for the months that you're gone. What percentage of that rent should you be paying a property manager?
Yeah, so we see market average anywhere from 8% to 14%. I would say, take a look, shop around, see what some property management companies are charging. Maybe you have a family friend and you can, or a family member who can help you out, and you can manage everything electronically from a web-based system like Innago too. So that's always an option. It's nowadays with cell phones and the internet, it's pretty easy to manage things from afar. Like I own a property with my dad and it's in Florida, and we don't have a property management company. So definitely consider that, something like that as well. Dave, anything to add?
No, I think you're exactly right. I totally agree with that summary.
Wonderful. Okay. So Dave, I saw that you put in your info in the chat. Guys, I'm going to share this with you tomorrow in an email with the recording, with the PowerPoint slides. I saw several of you asking me. This offer that's on the screen, by the way, is just for AAOA members if you visit this website specifically. So you have to go to this website. Inaugo will give you a $25 Amazon gift card for using Inaugo. I will send you this link in the email tomorrow. So if you're like, oh gosh, I didn't get to write it down or I lost it, I'll send it to you tomorrow so you can click directly the link to get to it and sign up if that's something you want to start trying out. And thank you guys for staying on a little extra on time. I really appreciate it. You had some awesome tips. Chat was really going off and people had some great ideas as well. So I saw a couple of people even ask me if I could share the chat. I'm going to see if that's okay. It technically will have your name on it if you responded. So I have to double check if that's violates any privacy issues, or I might be able to just make it anonymous. So let me check in and see what I can do about that, because there were some excellent ideas in there and I think they are worth sharing. Dave and Tanvir, any last words before we close out the webinar today?
I just want to thank everybody for being here. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, hopefully
Bye.
we'll have you back again soon. Thank you, everybody. And please take the exit survey. I'd love to hear your thoughts and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Alexandra. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.